A poor student married a wealthy 70-year-old woman. This totally transformed his life. Subscribe to my channel and enjoy my new video. Daniel Carter was only 23 years old, but it seemed like he carried the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. A diligent law student, he believed that only hard work and perseverance would help him build a better future. However, life continuously tested his resolve. 2 years ago, the sudden death of his father shattered everything. A heart attack had taken away the man who was the backbone of the family, leaving Daniel not only with the pain of loss, but with a mountain of responsibilities. Old debts, long hidden, began to surface in the form of endless bills and threatening letters. Daniel became the head of the family, but lacked the resources to support his sick mother and younger sister. His sister, Claire, tried to smile despite the difficulties and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Daniel hid the full extent of their dire circumstances from her as he struggled to cope with the avalanche of debts. Each envelope in the mail was a reminder that he was losing the battle. He worked as an intern at a small law firm, but his salary barely covered the bare essentials. Sometimes he questioned if he was doing everything he could, how to save his mother, give his sister a future, and still continue his studies. One day, a senior lawyer at the office called him aside. "Daniel, you work too hard. I want to invite you to a formal event this week. I think you need a little distraction." The invitation seemed absurd to Daniel. He had neither the time, money, nor the proper attire to attend a high society event. But giving in to the lawyer's persistence, he agreed, thinking it might be a chance to make valuable connections. Something he had always heard was important for success in his field. That evening, Daniel found himself in a completely different world. The mansion hosting the event was magnificent. Glittering chandeliers, classical music in the background, and elegantly dressed people made him feel completely out of place. He wandered through the hall, trying to blend in and not draw attention, until a woman approached him. She looked different from anyone Daniel had ever known. Eleanor radiated confidence, as if the world was hers to command. Her gaze was piercing, but devoid of arrogance. "Young man, you don't seem to be from around here, are you?" Daniel hesitated, but answered honestly, "No, ma'am, I'm here by chance." A conversation that began as fleeting extended far longer than Daniel could have anticipated. Eleanor was genuinely interested in his life, family, and dreams. Without understanding why, Daniel found himself opening up to her more than he had ever shared with a stranger. When the evening ended, he said goodbye, unaware that this meeting would forever change his fate. In the following days, Daniel tried to return to his routine, but thoughts of Eleanor frequently resurfaced in his mind. Her confidence, attentiveness, and ability to see something more in him than just a poor student left an indelible mark on him. Meanwhile, problems at home continued to escalate. His mother's health deteriorated, and even Claire, trying to stay strong, began showing signs of stress. Daniel did everything he could to reassure his sister, but he knew he was at his breaking point. Debts piled up, and the feeling of helplessness consumed him more and more. Then, on an ordinary day, something extraordinary happened. Daniel was at the small law office where he worked when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was soft yet warm. "Daniel, this is Eleanor Roberts. I hope you remember me." Daniel was surprised but politely replied, "Of course, I remember you, Mrs. Roberts. How can I help you?" "Actually, Daniel, I think it's I who can help you. I'd like you to come to my home. I have an important matter to discuss with you." The call puzzled him. What could Eleanor possibly want? Why was a powerful, distant woman showing interest in him, a struggling student? Daniel considered ignoring the invitation, but thinking of his mother and sister, decided he had nothing to lose. The next day, he arrived at Eleanor's estate. The property looked even more impressive in daylight. Daniel was greeted by a housekeeper who led him to a spacious study. Eleanor waited for him in a comfortable chair, her expression calm yet resolute. "Daniel, thank you for coming," she said, gesturing toward the seat across from her. "Please sit down. We have something to discuss." Daniel complied, feeling the tension build inside him. Eleanor wasted no time. "I'll be direct. I see immense potential in you, something rare. And that's why I want to make you an offer." Daniel listened attentively, but nothing could have prepared him for what she said next. I want to marry you." Those words hit him like a bolt from the blue. Daniel blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. "Mrs. Roberts, with all due respect, what do you mean?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "I know it sounds strange, but hear me out. I'm not talking about love or romance. This is about an agreement. You need help, and I have my reasons." Daniel didn't know how to respond. Marriage to a woman he barely knew? But as he thought about his family and the burdens he carried, he began to see a strange logic in her words. "Think about my proposal, Daniel. Come back tomorrow with your decision," she said firmly. "And remember, sometimes the most unexpected opportunities change our lives forever." Her words echoed in Daniel's mind all night. He couldn't sleep, wondering how his life had come to this moment. "I want to marry you." It seemed unreal. But her proposal offered something he couldn't ignore, a chance to save his family. The decision wasn't easy. Accepting meant giving up a normal life, facing judgment from others, and stepping into a role he didn't fully understand. But the image of his sick mother and his sister's dreams guided him to the right choice. The next morning, Daniel returned to the mansion with a heavy heart but firm resolve. "Have you thought about my proposal?" Eleanor asked calmly, her tone full of unspoken meaning. "Yes, I've thought about it. My answer is yes," Daniel replied, trying to sound confident. "But I need to understand what you expect from me." Her smile hinted that she had anticipated his response. "My expectations are simple: mutual understanding. I'm not asking for love or emotional attachment. I only ask for trust and that you fulfill your role." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. This woman, with her penetrating gaze, clearly had more layers than she revealed. The wedding was swift, devoid of pomp or romance. Only the bare essentials: signatures, a few witnesses, and an atmosphere of awkward formality. Daniel understood this was no ordinary marriage. It was a carefully orchestrated arrangement. After the wedding, Daniel's life changed dramatically. For the first time in years, he didn't have to worry about money. The debts were paid off, his mother received the necessary treatment, and Claire was enrolled in a private school. Daniel finally breathed a sigh of relief, something he hadn't done in a long time. But a sense of unease lingered within him. Eleanor, on the other hand, remained enigmatic. She spent hours in her private study, writing letters and reviewing documents Daniel wasn't allowed to see. When they spent time together, she was polite but maintained her distance, as if avoiding any personal attachment. One evening, as Daniel wandered through the corridors of the mansion, he noticed a slightly ajar door. Peeking inside, he saw Eleanor at her desk. Her hands trembled as she held a piece of paper. Daniel quietly stepped back, careful not to betray his presence, but the image stayed with him. Later that evening, Eleanor called him into the living room. She sat gracefully, a sealed envelope on the table in front of her. "Daniel, it's time for you to understand why I made this proposal," she began, her tone serious yet calm. "Read this, and everything will become clear." Daniel took the envelope and began to open it, but her words stopped him. "I want you to know," she said, "that what's written here is just the beginning." He looked at her, confused and tense. The beginning of what? Her gaze was steady, a mixture of resolve and sadness. "You'll find out soon enough. Trust me, Daniel." He retreated to his room, where he finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a legal document. Eleanor's steady handwriting filled the page, her words echoing in his mind as he read. "Daniel, if you are reading this, it means you have accepted not only my proposal, but also the responsibility that comes with it. What I'm about to reveal won't be easy to understand, but I believe you can handle it." The letter went on to reveal a truth Daniel hadn't expected. Eleanor was terminally ill. Her diagnosis had reshaped her entire perspective on life. She had no family, no heirs, and no one she could trust with her legacy. Her decision to marry Daniel wasn't a whim, but a carefully considered choice. "I chose you because I saw something in you that I've never seen in the people around me. Honesty. Despite all your struggles, you remain true to yourself. You are exactly the kind of person I want to entrust my legacy to." Daniel felt the weight of her words settle heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't sure he was ready for such responsibility, but he understood that Eleanor had been right in her assessment. He had always fought, even when the world seemed against him. The attached document was unexpected. a legal transfer granting Daniel control over her vast estate and management of a charitable foundation Eleanor had spent her life building. When Daniel returned to the living room, Eleanor was waiting for him, composed as ever. "Well, did you read it?" she asked in an even tone. "Yes, I did, but I don't understand why you trust me with something like this. We're practically strangers." Eleanor sighed, looking out the window as if the answers were somewhere on the horizon. "I saw in you what I couldn't find in people closest to me, honesty and compassion. I've spent my life surrounded by those who cared only about what they could take from me. But you, Daniel, you asked for nothing and were willing to sacrifice everything for your family. And now, what do you want me to do?" Daniel asked, still struggling to process everything. "I want you to use this for good. I'm not going to tell you how to live, Daniel. Trust yourself and who you are." The days following their conversation were like a whirlwind. Eleanor had given him not just wealth, but a purpose. Yet Daniel wasn't sure he was ready to embrace it. As Eleanor's health declined, she continued her routines, writing letters and reviewing documents, preparing for the inevitable. Meanwhile, Daniel felt the burden of responsibility grow heavier. One evening, while they were in the library together, Daniel finally asked the question that had been troubling him for days. "I still don't understand why you chose me. You could have entrusted anyone, experts, advisors." Eleanor looked at him with a faint, wistful smile. "Because most of the people I've met in my life only care about themselves. I don't want this legacy to fall into the hands of those who see it as a way to accumulate power or wealth. I need someone who can do more. And you, Daniel, have something others don't, a heart that still believes in right and wrong." Daniel was silent, trying to process her words. He didn't know if he could live up to her trust, but he understood he couldn't let her down. As Daniel spent more time with Eleanor, he began to learn about the charitable foundation she had devoted her life to. She had spent decades helping underprivileged communities, funding educational programs, and supporting young people in difficult circumstances. Her passion was undeniable, but so was her disappointment in those who sought only personal gain from her efforts. "That's why I stopped trusting people," she admitted one evening. "Until I met you." Spending more time with Eleanor, Daniel gradually discovered the depth of her charitable foundation. She had devoted years of her life to helping the underprivileged, funding educational initiatives, and supporting young people facing tough circumstances. Her frustration with those who sought only personal gain fueled her dedication to making a meaningful difference. As time went on, Daniel became more involved in the foundation's work. He met scholarship recipients whose futures were brighter because of Eleanor's generosity, families who had managed to rebuild their lives, and communities transformed through her tireless efforts. These encounters gave him a profound understanding of the impact she had made. During the final week of her life, Daniel spent nearly every moment by Eleanor's side. Their conversations grew increasingly personal and reflective. She spoke of her youth, her achievements, and the regrets she carried. On her last day, as they said their goodbyes, she looked at him with quiet assurance and said, "Don't be afraid. You have everything you need to succeed." A few hours later, she passed away peacefully. Without Eleanor, the mansion felt utterly changed. The silence that once symbolized her serene presence now felt hollow and oppressive. Daniel found himself adrift, struggling to navigate the void she left behind. Among her papers, he discovered a letter addressed to him. "Daniel, if you are reading this, then the path forward is now yours. I don't expect perfection from you. I only hope you'll do the best you can with what I've entrusted to you. Use this fortune to bring hope to those who, like you, have felt the weight of the world on their shoulders." Her words became his guiding star, lighting his way through an uncertain future filled with challenges. Daniel visited several projects started by Elena and met people whose lives had changed thanks to her. These encounters deeply moved Daniel. He began to realize the true meaning of Eleanor's legacy. It was not about money, but about what they could do for others. Meanwhile, his personal life improved as well. His mother, Maria, began to recover, her health steadily improving with the treatment she received. Claire thrived in school, excelling in her studies and making plans to pursue her dream of becoming a veterinarian. Daniel felt immense relief seeing his family flourish, but he knew his journey was far from over. One night, sitting alone in the study Eleanor had once occupied, Daniel made a decision. Picking up the phone, he called the directors of the foundation. "I want to meet with everyone. We have work to do." The next day, Daniel presented his vision for the foundation's future. He spoke of expanding its efforts to help those in difficult circumstances and creating new opportunities for those in need, just as Eleanor had done for him. Under Daniel's leadership, the foundation began to grow, surpassing its original scope. He spearheaded initiatives in education, healthcare, and support programs for talented youth in need. For the first time in years, Daniel felt that his life was no longer defined by survival. It now had a deeper meaning. Each day brought new challenges, but also victories. Daniel worked tirelessly to ensure every initiative aligned with Eleanor's vision. One of the most significant moments came during a ceremony organized by one of the foundation's first scholarship recipients. A young doctor, who had completed his education with the foundation's support, spoke about how it had saved not only his career but also his mother's life, as she had required urgent medical treatment. "If not for this help, I wouldn't be here today, saving lives. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to the memory of Eleanor Roberts, who believed in me when no one else did." The speech touched everyone in attendance, but Daniel felt something profound. He realized he carried not just responsibility, but also the tangible impact of his decisions. While the foundation flourished, Daniel made more time for his family. His mother, now fully recovered, often reminded him how much he had changed their lives. "You made this happen, Daniel," she said one evening, holding his hands. "No, Mom," Daniel replied, his voice full of emotion. "Eleanor gave me the chance, but my strength always came from you and Claire." Claire, too, thrived, excelling in school and eagerly planning her future. "I always knew you'd succeed," she told him with admiration shining in her eyes. Despite his achievements, Daniel never forgot the woman who had made it all possible. In the foundation's headquarters, he created a memorial room dedicated to Eleanor. It housed her photographs, letters, and excerpts from her speeches. It was his way of preserving her legacy and inspiring others. One winter day, Daniel was invited to the opening of a vocational school funded by the foundation. During the event, he was asked to deliver a speech. "When I started this journey, I didn't know if I was ready. I had more doubts than confidence, more fear than courage. But one person believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Today, I stand here not just because of her faith in me, but because of the legacy she entrusted to all of us." After the ceremony, Daniel lingered on the stage, reflecting on Eleanor's influence. She had changed his life, and now her legacy was transforming the lives of countless others. Later that evening, when he returned home, Daniel found Maria and Claire waiting for him in the living room. It was a simple scene, but it held profound meaning. His mother was healthy, his sister was full of dreams, and everything he had fought to protect remained intact. "How was the event?" Maria asked, handing him a cup of tea. "It was incredible, Mom, but more importantly, it reminded me that everything we've been through was worth it," Daniel replied. Claire, sitting beside him, looked at him with pride. "I always knew you'd make it," she said, her eyes shining. The sound of rain tapping against the window broke the silence. Daniel stood by the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass. He thought of Eleanor, her words, and the deep gratitude he felt for her. Her legacy was a flame that would continue to burn, passed from one person to another, changing lives forever.